Hello everybody, and this is just an intro to the video you're about to watch. It was a long several days of big batch cooking, and so long in fact that by the end I forgot to tell you everything that we made. So, starting from the top, we made beef stroganoff. We made spaghetti and meatballs. We made scalloped potatoes with ham. We made shepherd's pie, and we made Salisbury steak. It's quite a few. We did good. So please enjoy the video, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Welcome back, everybody. Today is going to be the beginning of another big batch cooking day. I'm actually going to be making a grand total of 6 recipes, and they're all new. And I'm pretty excited about this because this is something new that I can add into my repertoire to feed my family, feed them while they're working, feed myself. It's a win-win. So the very first recipe, and I will list them all off shortly, but the very first one we're going to make is shepherd's pie, or actually in this case cottage pie, because I'm using ground beef instead of lamb. I believe that's how that works. But I'm going to be starting with 4 pounds of ground beef, and it's a pretty simple recipe. I will not actually be adding anything but corn in this recipe. I have a family member who's a little goosey about trying new vegetables, and they have a set few that they really enjoy, so I try to stick with that, and then I eat my veggies at my own time. But for this one, it's going to have cubed potatoes in it, and it will have corn in it, plus onions, garlic, all the good stuff, and then I will also add cubed potatoes, which I actually have some that are already frozen, and I'm defrosting them now. And that will go into the center. And then, just to gild the lily, I'm going to make mashed potatoes to put on the top of our cottage pie, or shepherd's pie. And I'm going to include in the filling some nice brown gravy. So I'm going to get started on that, and I'll be right back with you. Okay, I am back, and as you can see, we've got the ground beef working pretty well here. These were frozen. But I have learned over the years it is super easy. If you're going to be doing a preparation like this, whether it's sausage or any kind of ground meat, it's okay to put it in frozen, and as it cooks you can scrape off as it softens and continue to cook. Now the only thing I have added in here for the moment is just salt, and I added 2 tablespoons of my fine sea salt because this is 4 pounds of ground beef. So it needed quite a bit more seasoning. I'm going to add nothing else but that for the time being until this is fully cooked, and then I can drain off the fat. So I will be right back. Okay, so the ground beef is now fully cooked, and what I've done is I've turned off the heat. I've got a Ziploc bag with my bag holder, and I'm going to drain off the fat. And all I do is I basically pull up all the excess grease with a ladle, and when I get to the very bottom of it, I tip the pan and get the rest of it out. Once I do that, we can move on with the filling. Okay, so I am back, and our ground beef is done. As you can see over here, I've got the Ziploc bag with the excess grease. I have added the little bit of cubed potato that I have left. I'm going to add my corn first. And I'm going to see, and this is just a 12-ounce bag of frozen corn, the kind that you can steam in the bag. So, and I'm just going to give that a mix. I was considering adding more potatoes. I thought the bag was a little bit bigger than it was. And, I think I might. It was about 2 cups of cubed potatoes that I had left over in the freezer. And I think actually I need quite a bit more than that. Now I have, like I said, I've got that little bit of the 2 cups of cubed potatoes. I've got the 12-ounce bag of frozen corn, and I'm going to go ahead and add some seasonings now. And again, this is a big batch, so, and I'm going to fight with this thing. It is such a fine onion powder that it doesn't want to come out of the holes. So, I know how to combat that. I'm just going to scoop it out. So, I'm going to do that. And that was a tablespoon. And that looks plenty good right there. Now, my garlic, I don't have to worry about that as much. It's a little bit coarser grind, but I'm also not going to use as much. Probably that right there. I don't know if any of you have ever wondered, but on my containers, I have the words small on each of them. But they're not facing their labels out except for this guy. It's real simple. The way these lids were designed, for whatever reason, I like the small holes. The large holes are way too big, but the bottles were backwards. And so I just one day decided, get the Sharpie, write small on it so you know which side to open first, because I was driving myself crazy. Okay, so real simple ingredients. 4 pounds of ground beef, and it's going to be, I started with 2 cups of cubed potatoes, russet. I'm actually going to do 4 cups, and a 12-ounce bag of frozen corn, salt, garlic powder, and onion powder. That's all I've got so far. That's pretty much it. I will also be adding thyme and a bay leaf. So that's pretty much the extent of it, because the rest is going to be gravy, brown gravy, and then I'm going to actually make some mashed potatoes and put these in casserole dishes, top them with the potatoes, top them with some grated cheddar cheese, bake it in the oven, and it'll be beautiful. So I'm going to go ahead and get this going, and I'm going to work on my potatoes next. Like I said, the temperature is off, so this can sit and nothing bad will happen, and I will be right back. Okie doke. So I have moved our meat mixture that has a little bit of potato in it and the corn, and I've set it aside. It is just sitting tight. And what I did was I took about 4, I'd say medium-sized russet potatoes, and went ahead and diced it up. And the bottom of my pot is wet, so it's talking to me. I did soak these in cold water to get some of the excess starch off. And all I'm going to do is par cook this. I'm not going to cook it all the way through. So I'm only going to cook it maybe 10 minutes. That's it. And then I'm going to add it over here to our meat mixture. And then we can start finishing it up. This is a real simple recipe, because after this, I'm going to drain these, add it to this, mix it up. I'm going to add the gravy in, and the filling's done. That's it. And then after that, I'm going to boil some more potatoes for our topping, and put everything in a casserole dish and bake it with some cheese on top. And actually everything will be cooked except for these guys right here. But again, I'm going to par cook those for about 10 minutes, and then in the oven, I'm going to cook the whole shebang for probably 30 minutes. Probably 30 minutes at 350 would be good for that, and those potatoes will be done at that point. So that's pretty much it for the time being. It's a super fast recipe. I love it, and it freezes beautifully. So again, just a few ingredients, and you've got dinner on the table. So another good freezer meal. So I will be back when these are ready to drain and put over here, and I'm probably going to get my oven preheated and get my other potatoes prepped so that we can make some mashed potatoes. So I will see you shortly, my friends. Okay, I've got the potatoes boiling. I just turned off the heat, and they'll be good to go. I'm going to strain them out here in just a moment. And I've started peeling and cutting up my larger potatoes for the mashed potatoes. So I'm going to get these guys drained and move them over to our big pot, and I'll be back shortly. Okay, here I've got, I've taken out and mixed in our new cubed potatoes, and I have washed, and they're changing color fast. These were much older potatoes, but I took all the bad spots out and got them in there. They're coming to a boil pretty quickly, and then we will mash those up after they are done. So I will be right back. Okay, our potatoes are done. I've turned the heat off, and they are fork tender. So I'm going to drain these and get to working on getting them mashed. So I will drain them very quickly here. So, got them drained, and I'm just going to give them kind of a preliminary mash. Better move that handle before we have an issue. Okay, that looks pretty good. Set that aside. Now, I salted these fairly well, so I will check for salt relatively. I will check for salt after I get all of it mashed to the consistency that I want. And yes, these are potatoes, and yes, I use butter. Not margarine, butter. Give it some elbow grease here. Now, I generally like my potatoes relatively smooth, and I do that especially it's smooth or loose, I guess is what I'm trying to say, the consistency, because in applications like this, it's going to, because of the starch in the potato, it is going to set up quite a bit. So I want them on the looser side so that I don't have bricks, basically, when it comes out of the oven. So I'm going to add some milk, and that's probably more than enough. Perfect. It looked like I added a ton of milk, but as you can see, they're not soupy at all. But that's how much potatoes can really drink up all that beautiful starch in there. And I am probably done with the mashing portion. And after I rearranged the kitchen, now I can't find anything. Okay, so I now have a nice wooden spoon here. I am going to add more milk. Now, I'm going to do it at a much slower pace. My dog is coughing in the background. So those are looking beautiful. If I were going to serve these just like this, I would stop there. But because I'm going to be putting them on our cottage / shepherd's pie, I want them to have just a little bit more loose quality here. Maybe even just a hair more than that. Let's go a little, boop, there we go. Okay. So these potatoes look beautiful. I'm going to give them an itty bitty taste so I can get an idea of what they taste like. And they're hotter than bejeebers here. Oh, they need a lot more salt. Where's my salt? I lost my salt. I really did. Where is my salt? Here it is. Okay. I have the salt. So I'm easily going to put a tablespoon of salt in there and give that a nice mix. Things like potatoes and pasta, that requires a lot of salt, actually. I remember when I first started cooking, when I was watching the cooking channel back in the day when they actually showed you how to cook. And in the beginning, I was so appalled by the amount of salt, because they were like, phew, you know, just boom, boom, boom. And then I really started grasping how cooking was and how seasoning really worked, and realized it was necessary. It was very necessary. Okay, let's try this again. Oh, that's perfect. It just needed that little extra tablespoon. Okay, so we're good. I am going to set the potatoes, I think, behind me. And I'm going to whip up our gravy, and we're going to start assembling. So I'll be right back. Now, I forgot to mention that I did show you the 1 jar of gravy that I had on the pantry shelf. I do know how to make my own gravy. I've done it a million times, but I wrapped up a bunch of filming today and organizing, and it's 10:30 at night and I'm tired. So I am going to go ahead and be creative, which I think is just code for I'm going to be lazy. We're going to use some convenience gravy packets, which I had in the pantry, so it's all good. And each of these require 1 packet, 1 cup of cold water. I'm going to make all 4 so that I have, again, enough to go through that huge amount of filling. So I'm going to start with the water first, and I'm probably going to have to fill this up. Let's see how far we get with this. I'm shy 1 cup. 1 cup! Oh, well, we do have a little bit left in here. Let's see what we got. 4 cups, and I had 3/4 of a cup, basically. Okay. Okay. We have our 4 cups of water. It actually says to just whisk it in while it's cold, which is kind of amusing to me, actually, because it's just going to float. But having said that, I'm going to get this gravy started. As soon as it's thickened, I can add it to our mixture, and we'll be done. Well, at least with this dish, we'll be done. I'll be right back. Okay, we got our gravy packets all put in there. Just going to whisk it. I've already got my heat on, and it's set at medium. And this won't take any time at all to come together. Basically, when you start seeing little ribbons of steam, start whisking, it'll thicken, you're done. So it's pretty easy. It's moments like this, I live and die by convenience because I just don't have much steam left. Alrighty, I'll be right back. Alrighty, we have our setup here. So I made 4 cups of the gravy, and 4 turned out to be perfect. The seasoning is spot on, and I think we're good to go. And all I'm going to do is fill the bottom of my casserole pan. I'll kind of smooth that out as I go. Need a bigger spoon, but I don't have one currently. They're all dirty. Yeah, they're all dirty right now. Okay. Now, probably yeah, I'm going to fill that up a bit more. There we go. Okay, so we've got a nice even amount. And I have my potatoes. So we'll kind of rotate and shift everybody over. Now I'm debating on how I want to do this. Do I want to dollop? I should probably dollop, because if I try to spread before I dollop, it's just going to get mixed up into our filling. And with any luck, I can get 2 of these. So that will be lovely. Let's spread a little bit here. And I do it where it doesn't have to cover the whole thing uniformly. Just as long as you've got enough of the potatoes. Like, it's a little sparse over here. And just kind of give a little extra love in the naked spots. That didn't sound right. My deepest apologies. That came out completely awful. Oh dear. I want to say that I'm going to edit that out, and probably by the time I edit this, I will find it extremely funny and leave it in. So there you go. But yeah. And I would say that looks pretty lovely. Okay, maybe a little bit more in the end here. Just cuz. And I do have enough, I think, for a second one. And all I'm going to do is grab my pre-shred cheddar cheese, because I happen to have some of this left. So, and it needs to be used up. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'm just going to get happy and sprinkle it, because you know me and my cheese. It is all about the cheese. I like to try and get those edges. Some folks, and I think I'm kind of one of them, where you like those little crispy, cheesy edges. That's always really nice to have. I can hear you all night. She going back for more? Yes, I'm going back for more. There we go. So, and yes, I went back several times, but that only worked out to about 2 cups of cheese. But we have our first one done, and it's beautiful. And like I said, everything is fully cooked. All you're really doing is you're reheating it. If it's from frozen, like if it's frozen solid, you want an oven of no less than 375, at least 375, and you're probably going to go for an hour, maybe an hour and a half, depending on your oven. But that's when it's frozen solid. In this state, or refrigerated, 350, not 375, 350 for about 30 minutes, and you should be good to go, because everything just needs to be heated through. Alrighty, we've got this done. I'm going to make up the other one. I want to thank you all for joining me, and the next recipe we will get started on, I've got a number of them. Spaghetti meatballs, Salisbury steaks, Swedish meatballs. Yeah, we got quite the lineup. I'm also going to be doing some scalloped ham and potatoes, which I think will be really lovely. So our first one is done. Our cottage / shepherd's pie is done and ready to go in the freezer. I'll see you in a little bit. All right, welcome back. We are getting started on our next recipe, and this is going to be scalloped potatoes and ham. Now, this is a box mix, and I'm going to, the boxes, if you watch my grocery haul video, you already know this, but they are all twin packs, and I'm going to double the recipe, meaning I'm going to use 4 boxes, well, potentially 6, instead of 2. So I'm going to start, I'm boiling a ton of water here, because each box requires 2 cups of boiling water. So I've got a big old pot going here, and I have cleaned out all of my new casserole pans. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually cook through all of these. Then I'm going to store them in the freezer. And to reheat, I will just simply bring it to the refrigerator, defrost it, and then I can either warm it in the oven on a low temp with some added liquid, probably milk over there, or I can portion it out and put it into individual servings and heat it up in the microwave. Either one will work fine. So I am going to get this water to a boil, and we will be moving on. I'm going to start by taking our ham, and I'm going to basically say, depending on how much these hold, these are a little bit different pans than I normally buy. I thought I was getting the usual ones. They're still the same. They're 9 by 13, but they just seem like, I don't know, they seem like maybe they're not as deep or deeper. I don't know. My point being, I may end up using an entire package of this, with 2 of the boxes in here, and then that will be the ratio that I use. But it depends. I'm going to have to play with that. But for the most part, my first step is, while the water is boiling, is to go ahead and take this ham out and get it into bite-sized pieces. So I'll be right back. Okay, so our water's hot. I've got all my measuring cups. I have diced up the ham in bite-sized pieces. And I've got all of my little ingredients, and it's pretty straightforward. All I need to do, I start with my hot water, I believe. Let's see. They want me to put everything together. Okay, yeah, so all I do is, I'm going to take this off, and basically it's super easy. You just add your water, your milk, your butter, your seasoning packet, and then you whisk everything together, and then you add your potatoes. So let me grab a whisk here. And because I'm doubling this, you just double everything straight across the board. It's super easy. So I'm going to use 4 cups of water and try not to burn myself as I go. And as you can see that I'm making this actually on a cookie sheet so that I can just put it straight in the oven, because these you don't want to lift without some kind of support underneath it. Okay, there's our second cup of water. And 3 and 4. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit more. There we go. Okay. And I'm also keeping an eye on how it fills up, because this is only the second time I have cooked with this particular style of casserole pan. So I want a cup of milk, so I'll just go ahead and use my cup measure since I'm doubling. If I can get the cap off. There we go. All right, so it calls for a half cup, but I'm doubling it, so I'm going to do 1 cup. And sit that over there. I'm going to throw in my butter, and the butter is just a tablespoon, so I'll use my 2 tablespoons, which is about that right there. And I need my seasoning packets. Now, I have learned that despite how it looks, that you can actually tear these open with your bare hands, you will not be able to do so. At least I can't. Maybe you all have better luck with it, but I can never tear these packets open. I have to have scissors. I can't seem to make it work, so. Okay, we're going to toss that bad boy in there. Okay, let me grab my whisk. Be a little loud here, sorry. Okay, I got some on the edges there. So I'm just going to whisk all that in. Now the ham itself, it's not going to change like the cook time ratio or anything. The ham is fully cooked, and I don't need to be too concerned about it like absorbing too much moisture or that kind of thing, because you know, ham is juicy, so that will actually just add a lovely flavor to that. Let me get my butter out of the way before I drop a package in it or something. I have no problem doing it the convenience food way in this particular instance. And I've actually made this brand for years. It's Betty Crocker. Love it. Family loves it. I think there's a time and a place for convenience foods. I really do. Okay, now I'm going to add my ham in. And as I mentioned before, I am not so sure how much exactly I'm going to use of this per pan. Let me kind of stir that. I'm going to grab a spoon. Okay, so kind of mix that together. It's actually not very deep, to be honest, but I'm going to I'm not going to add another package. I'm just going to do it in a separate pan because I don't want to overdo it like I just did by dropping all that ham in. But I want it to be more of a meal, not a side. That looks, actually doesn't look too bad. Trying to disperse it, because once it goes in the oven, it is not going to be stirred again. So I want to be sure that there is a bit of ham and a bit of potato in every bite. So I'm probably going to just kind of press that down. And I am at probably, it cooks for, when they say you do a double batch on the box, you're going to cook it for 30 minutes at 450 degrees. Probably the last 10 minutes, I'm going to open the oven and I'm going to put cheddar cheese on top because why not? Okay, that's it. It can go in the oven. So I will set the timer and be right back with you. Okay, we have both of our dishes complete and they're going to go in the oven now for 30 minutes at 450 degrees, uncovered. I'll be right back. Okay. They turned out beautifully. I am super, super happy. I'm going to let them cool. And then I'm just going to put the aluminum tops on them and cinch them down. And then I'll refrigerate them. I'll refrigerate one. This is after they cool down. And I will probably refrigerate one for dinner this weekend. And then the other one I will label and freeze. So I think I'm going to move on next to, I believe, the Salisbury steak. So I'll see you shortly. Okay, so it's getting pretty late at night and I'm going to have to do probably some more cooking tomorrow, but what I decided to do instead was kind of do some double duty. So with the ground beef here, it's 10 pounds and I've got two dishes that require meatballs, basically. But one I'm not going, may or may not get to, but one I for sure will. The other dish that requires ground beef is the Salisbury steak. So what I plan on doing is I'm just going to half this right down the center, and I'm going to make up the meatballs and the Salisbury steaks. And conveniently enough, the meatball and Salisbury steak kind of have the same seasoning, so that makes it a little bit easier. The Salisbury steak will have the addition of basil in it and some thyme, but the meatballs will have basically all of this right here: some Italian seasoning, Italian breadcrumbs that I've made myself, powdered garlic, powdered onion. We've got some eggs over here and a little warm water, and that is, and salt, of course, and that is basically the meatballs. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to get started on that, and I'm just going to take half of this and break it apart and put it in here. I do like to break up ground beef or any kind of ground meat, sausage, ground turkey, ground chicken, ground pork, you know, all of the meats. But I like to do something. I guess it could look like maybe hang on here. It could look like maybe an extra step, but what I like to do, and this actually does make a difference, when you're trying to make like meatloaf or meatballs, and you are adding a lot of things and you're mixing a lot of things, it can get really hard I don't believe in the fact that working ground beef or whatever makes it tough. I do not buy into that. I never have, and I've never had tough meatloaf or meatballs. I've never had that happen. So I'm a thorough mixer. You know this about me. But what I do like to do is I will take the ground meat and I will do this. Let me just kind of roll that partial roll and scoot what I'm working on over. And this is what I do. I take and I will break things up, because as I'm mixing it compacts, but the problem is when you're done breaking up all the meat and you put all of your seasonings and things on top, then you've got to somehow magically take this big ball of meat and work all that stuff down through the meat evenly. And we all know that's not going to happen. You're not going to be able to magically fluff it in with a fork. You're not going to magically give it 3 turns and everything will be evenly seasoned. That doesn't happen. It's not going to happen that way. But what I have found, and I found it out by accident one day, is that if you just take your ground meat, whatever it may be, and you just break it apart and leave it kind of fluffed up. You don't have to squish it down or anything like that. And just go on and do all that, okay? And as you go, you're not squishing anything down. It's just kind of laying on top. You don't have to go super small. Just break it apart so that it's not one solid ball of meat, I guess. And once you're done with that, it's a lot easier. As I'll show you, once you get your seasonings on top, it's a lot easier to get down underneath and fold and move those seasonings through. So by breaking it up, you're just allowing those seasonings and everything to permeate the meat on a much more even scale. So just a little tip I wanted to share with you, that this is my go-to way of doing it. As I've said, I've never had bland meatballs or meatloaf. I've never had it dry or be dense and unfriendly. But no, it works beautifully. So I'm going to go ahead and get our seasoning started here. And I will be right back after I get the hamburger off my fingers. Alrighty, so we got our meat all broken apart and we're looking pretty good there. And I'm going to start with my salt. This is 5 pounds, so we're going to put quite a bit of salt, and I'm going to disperse it pretty evenly, and I would say 2 tablespoons, 2 good-sized tablespoons. And for my Italian seasoning, there's Italian seasoning in the breadcrumbs that I made. However, these meatballs are doing double duty. I'm just going to roll with it and use the wonderful flavor that's already in here. So I've got a tablespoon here. I'm going to kind of squish it together and rub it between my fingers. That releases the oils. And I'm going to do 2 of those. And I opened up the shaker on this, but I think I'm going to just use my hand. Garlic, I'm going to go a little over a tablespoon. And again, just go around the edges and then the top. And that also helps to disperse your seasonings better too. By not concentrating them right in the center, you've got a little bit more area to work with. In cooking, real estate is everything. So with the onion, I'm going to go 2 tablespoons, same process, go around the edges, and then the top. And what I almost forgot was my oregano. And oregano can be pretty strong, but I am basically making Italian meatballs. I will not add this when I do the Salisbury steaks, but for the meatballs, it's kind of an all-purpose meatball. It has a wonderful flavor, and I think that would be very, very yummy. So I'm just going to go with a tablespoon of that. Oregano can be kind of strong, so we don't want it to get too crazy. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to use a couple of eggs. I could probably use more eggs, but I don't know really if I really need to, because I'm actually also going to add some warm water to this. Warm water is, I think, the key to keeping it moist. It keeps that extra bit of moisture in the meat. So I'm just going to attempt to crack these open, minus any shells, if we can do that, because that would be super. All right, we're good there. And we're good there. Okay, now we've got everything but the breadcrumbs. And let me rinse off my fingers. Okay, so we've got everything in but the breadcrumbs. Here's the deal. You're gonna always need, when you do it this way, you're gonna need more breadcrumbs than you think. So, like, for instance, here's a nice big half-gallon jar. I am probably going to use quite a bit. Like, not quite half, but getting there. I'm going to grab myself a tiny bit of warm water, about a little over a quarter of a cup. I may not use all that. I'll be right back. Okay, so I got my water. I am not going to use this whole thing. I get a larger container because I get water that I cook with, I get from our water tower. And that way I can put both hot and cold water in and get it to just a warm temperature. And I will use some of this. I will not be using all of it. So this is what I'm going to do. And this will also help to get your seasonings in throughout the meat. Before I add the breadcrumbs, I'm going to add a splishy splash of water. So that was about a quarter cup. Okay. And now the breadcrumbs. And I'm just going to eyeball this. So that's about a cup. That's about 2 cups. And 2 and a friend. All right. Now, I'm debating here because my issue is that I'm down to my last pair of disposable gloves for mixing. So, yeah, it's about to get messy, but it's, you know, you didn't do it right if you didn't get messy. So, I'm just going to get in here, and I'm not going to squish down. I'm going to reach in and pull up, just like fluffing and folding. If you were to use a spoon and they tell you to fold in your ingredients, kind of the same premise. Whoops, we had someone escape. You come back here. I gotta sanitize my spice jar. Okay, it's still pretty solid, so let's go ahead and add some more water. And as you can see, those big pockets of breadcrumbs, you can tell that your seasoning did get to the bottom, which is good because as you reach in and you're pressing and you're folding this, all of those spices are getting in there evenly. So I just lift it up, fold it, give it a push down, squeeze it with my fingers, keep going. And I do rotate the bowl because, again, it helps incorporate those seasonings, because if you keep it in one direction the whole time, guess what? You're putting those spices and seasonings all in the same spot. So I do this a couple times and just keep rolling. Well, it's like you're kneading bread, basically. And I like to use my thumbs to squish it down through because, again, that makes those little holes for all the spices to get in there and really get situated throughout the entire meat. Now, it's looking pretty good. Everything has been incorporated. But I think I need more eggs. Yeah, I do. It needs to be looser. So, I'm gonna add some more eggs. I've got 2 left in this carton. Okay. And strangely enough, give me a second, I need to wash my hands. Okay, so got my hands clean enough that I can handle my jar. And I think that's probably pretty good. I've got my 2 eggs added in here. So we're up to 4 eggs. Yeah, that feels better. Yep, it needed those extra eggs. This is a lot of meat. 5 pounds is a lot. So you need to really season it thoroughly and add all your goodies in there. Goes back to that old thing. You need to beat it like it owes you money. That's looking a lot better. It's loosening up. And the eggs are getting nicely incorporated. And the seasonings. And it's actually lifting out of the bowl. So I would say we're making good progress. My bowl is clean underneath, which means I picked up all the breadcrumbs, all the spices, everything is in the meat now and not sitting on the bottom of the bowl. So I would say that looks, yeah, that looks pretty good. So, just show it to you. It looks really good. You can see spices and breadcrumbs and all the goodness all the way through. So now I'm going to start making meatballs, a lot of meatballs, and I generally use a cookie scoop. I have a small, I think it's 1.5 inch cookie scoop, and put them out on sheet pans. I'll show you as I go here. And then I cook them at 350 or 375 in this case. Gets a nice crust on them. And I don't cook them all the way through. And I cook them for about 35 minutes. So I'll be right back. Okay, so this is a cookie scoop I was talking about. It's about a 1.5 inch scoop. And all I do is do it about like that. Pop it out my hand, give it a roll, plop it down. And I know it sounds weird because it's ground beef, there's going to be fat, but my aluminum foil isn't non-stick. And I have found that things stick pretty badly even if they're a little bit higher fat. So yeah, I give it just a light, thin coating of olive oil just to keep things from sticking. We want to build a nice crust on these. We don't want them sticking. So, yeah, that's about it. Roll it, plop it down. And I do about 4 across, and I'm going to have at least 2 trays, if not 4. But at any rate, I'm going to get busy and keep going on these, and I'll be right back with you. Alrighty, we have our meatballs done. These are going to go for the Swedish meatball recipe, and I've got 4 dozen here. So yeah, we're going to be making a lot. So I'm going to put these in the oven. The oven's at 375. And like I said, I'm going to cook them for about a half an hour. Yeah, no longer than a half an hour. Again, they don't need to be cooked all the way through. They don't need to be, super hard because they're actually going to cook in the sauce too. So, alrighty, I will be back shortly. Alrighty, our meatballs are done. Let's see if we can get them out safely. Those are glorious. They turned out so beautiful. And they're cooked just barely through, so they won't get tough when I cook them in the sauce. So I'm going to let these cool, and then I will package them up and actually put them in some Ziploc bags for the night in the refrigerator. And then we will pick this massive cooking project up again in the morning. Thank you, everyone, and I will see you in the morning. Alrighty, we are back, everybody. And what I've got here, I'm going to be working on the stroganoff. And I'm going to use this chuck roast. And basically, stew meat is basically leftover pieces of other cuts. It's kind of a mishmash. But chuck roast is a good one to use if you have it on hand. And stew meat by itself in the stores is absolutely obscenely overpriced at this point. It's like $11 for a pound. That's way out of control. But as I said before, that I did have a couple of chuck roasts from Costco that I portioned out and froze. This is one of them. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to cube this and slow simmer it till the meat is tender. Just like if I was doing an actual roast for dinner, except I'm going to cube it up. So I'm going to go through and go about every inch all the way across, and then I'm going to cube it. And I'm going to slow cook this. All I'm going to do is season it with salt, and I'm going to sear it, which I will show you when we get to that part. And then I'm going to slow simmer it, or braise it, if you will, in beef broth, basically. I do not have my own beef broth or stock canned on the pantry shelf because, again, anything beef related is insanely overpriced. And trying to get beef bones to make any of my own stock is, yeah, I don't have that kind of budget. I'm not sure of too many people that do right now. But I do use Better Than Bouillon, the brand, and have found that that is just, it really is fantastic. I don't like bouillon cubes because it's really just kind of like cheap beef flavoring and salt. The Better Than Bouillon is more like a stock base. And I've used bouillon cubes in the past, and they're fine. But the Better Than Bouillon is more true to a natural state of the essence of beef flavor, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So as you can see, I've got some nice cubes here, and they're all bite size. And keep in mind too, they're going to cook down, so they're going to get a bit smaller than this. So actually, I probably might go a little bit larger, like this guy, because once it cooks down, it's going to be a 1 by 1 inch piece. So that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to go through here and finish out this roast. I'm going to get my pan good and hot because I want to get a good sear. And I'm going to go in batches because I don't want this meat to steam. I want it to get nice and seared. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got a good portion here already cubed up, and I've seasoned it with salt, garlic powder, and onion powder. I put some olive oil in my pot here, and I'm just going to start adding it in. Now I want to do this, as I said before, in batches, because if I don't, it's going to steam. So let me see if I can raise you up here just here. Ma'am. Okay, that's a little better. But as you can see, we've got just our olive oil heating up here, and it's good and hot, so I'm going to go ahead and start adding. Now, it's a pretty good pile here. We've got that good sound we want. That sizzle is everything. Now, I'm not going to add it to where everything is touching. So it'll take me a little bit to get all of this done in batches, but we're developing flavor. And it's really important to do that. So it's worth it to take a little extra time. I can set that pile over here. I can keep going with what I have left. And I'm also doing this whole thing because it'll give me a lot more. I can make multiple batches of the stroganoff. So I'm going to use this entire roast. Now this I'm going to let sit. There's a saying that when you are cooking with stainless steel, which this copper pot is on the inside, that when your meat will tell you when it's ready to move because it will come away from the pan. If it's still sticking, it's not ready. I don't know how accurate that is, but I do know that if it's sticking, you need to have your heat high, and you need to let your meat sit still. Don't fuss with it. So I will let this sit like 3 minutes. Now by that time, it should release away from the pan beautifully. So we're going to give that a go. I don't know how accurate that saying is about, letting your meat continue to sear, and when it's ready to come away from the pan, it will, because I tend to fuss with things in the pan. But generally, I have found that 3 to 4 minutes, and you're good to go. And especially if you have the proper amount of fat in your pan, and the heat is essential, because if you don't have your heat high enough, you are going to sit there forever, and it's just going to keep sticking. So we're going to go with this first batch. I'm going to set my timer for 3 minutes. Well, 2 actually, because we've been talking. And once that goes, I'm going to give it a stir, get everything turned to the other side, and I'm going to keep going on my roast here and getting that cubed up. So I'll be right back. I'm on my second batch here, and as you can tell, the color is beautiful. All of those beautiful brown bits in the bottom, that's going to provide a lot of flavor because I'm actually going to cook the meat in here and then make the stroganoff in here. So all that beautiful flavor will be a part of the dish. This is my finished first batch over here. You can definitely see the beautiful color on it. And once this is done, I will be putting this in next. And I think I'm going to go ahead and split it into 2 more batches. That way, again, plenty of room. Whoop, steam. There's plenty of room so that nothing steams, but it sears beautifully. So I'll be right back. The last round of meat has been seared, and I'm about to take that out of the pan and add it to its friends over here. And then with the remainder of all of the brown bits and all of the flavors in the bottom of this pan, I'm going to start adding my better than bouillon. And for this pot, I'm only going to use probably 2 tablespoons, and then I'll use probably 16 ounces of water, or just enough to cover the meat so with that it can braise. So that'll be it for the moment, and I'll be right back. Alrighty, so I have added my better than bouillon base, and what I did was 2 tablespoons to a coffee cup of hot water. Dissolved it, poured that in, and then I added about 4 more cups of water, just regular out of my tower over there. Uh, that guy right there. And I'm going to bring this up to a simmer and get it going. Then I'll reduce the heat, cover it, and just let it rock and roll for probably about an hour. I tested the meat, and this is a really good quality meat, and it's not super tough. It actually was quite chewable. You know how chuck is a tough meat. That's why you stew it for so long or braise it. And this was actually kind of tender already. So I don't suspect I'll have to braise this really for more than an hour. And once that's done, then I'll start putting the stroganoff together. So next I'm going to get busy on the Salisbury steaks and get those cooked up. I'll be right back. Okay, so we are back and we have our meat mixture from last night that we're going to be using to make our Salisbury steaks. This is the thing about Salisbury steak. It's basically a elevated hamburger patty. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to use a scoop and pull some of this out just so I can kind of minimize how much I end up getting underneath my nails. And let's see, we're going to use about a ball like this. And I'm going to form it and then press it, trying to keep that round shape. Now I've got my skillet behind me preheating, and keep in mind your burger meat will draw up, so you're going to press it to the shape that you want. So about like that. It's fairly thin. But then I'm going to do something, this is a trick I learned a long time ago. Get my little ends put together there. You're going to take and make a little divot in the center, because when this cooks up, it's going to tend to want to draw up into a ball. So you put that little divot on there, and you're good to go. So I'm going to keep going with this, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got my patties in the skillet, and all I'm going to do is cook them through, not super well done, because they're going to be reheated later and they're going to be topped with gravy. So yeah, you don't want to overcook, but you definitely want them cooked through. And I'm going to go ahead and keep working my way through the mixture. I decided to go ahead and use the mixture from last night, simply because it was already seasoned and ready to go. And as you saw last night, we got 4 dozen meatballs, so I probably don't need to make any more meatballs for what I'm doing, today for the dishes I've got. Our stroganoff meat is looking fantastic. I just checked it. It could use about another 30 to 40 minutes and it will be done. So I'm going to keep on moving with this and I'll be right back at you. Alrighty, so we got our Salisbury steak patties done. We got 8 patties, so I'll make up 8 dinners with those. And what I'll do next, while our stroganoff meat is still cooking, is I'm going to start on the mashed potatoes. So I'm going to serve this with brown gravy over the top and then a side of mashed potatoes. So I will get busy on that and I'll be right back. Okay, for this recipe I did 7 potatoes because they're going to expand once I add milk and all of that. But they're in cold water and salted. I used about a good tablespoon of salt to get, because you want that flavor in there, and potatoes have like nothing going on with them. So I've already turned off the heat on the stroganoff meat, the chuck roast meat that we cooked. It is now fully cooked and done. It's tender, ready to go. So the heat's off on that, and I'm going to turn the heat off on this and get it going on high, and I'm going to cover my lid, and once it comes to a boil I'm going to turn the heat down to about medium, and it'll be about 20 minutes. So I'll be right back. Okay, as I said, the stroganoff meat is cooked. Now this is what I'm going to do, and this is really what elevates something like boxed food into really, really good food. A lot of these I guess, kits, for want of a better term, will call for water. Instead of using water, I'm going to actually use the beef broth. It will give it an amazing flavor that nobody can touch. You will love it. So like in this particular case, this box calls for 3/4 of a cup of hot water per box. This is a 2-pack. And then 2 1/4 cups milk. So what I'm going to do is actually, instead of the water, I'm going to use the broth that I've made here. And what I don't end up using, if I have some left over, is I'll put it in a freezer safe container and freeze it. It is essentially beautiful beef stock. So yeah, don't get rid of it, use it. So I'll be right back. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually remove the stew meat and just put it in a bowl here. And then I'm going to do the same with this beautiful broth that we've made. And the reason why I'm doing that is that way I can measure out the broth as I go. So I have exact measurements as I go. And I'm also going to make, because the meat is already cooked, it's safe for me to go ahead and do the actual mixes up with the pasta and everything in it. And the pasta will overcook because everything's already fully cooked. I'm just basically putting it together at this point. So, and I'm using a slotted spoon so that I can drain off the broth and just get the meat out. So, as I chase them around, it takes a couple of minutes. I could use a spider, but this is fine. So, as I said, I'm going to go ahead and finish getting the rest of this meat removed, and then I'm going to take and remove the broth, set it aside, and then just basically start the entire recipe according to the box, and treat it basically like I'm just starting with all the components as I would if it were ground beef and I was making a weeknight dinner. So I'm going to scooch that off of there and get the broth out, and I'll be right back with you. Okay, so I've got my 3/4 cup measure, and that is for the broth. So we're going to do one of these, and I'm going to put that in, and then I'm going to put my 2 1/4 cups milk in. So we've got 1 here, 2. And again, I'll be precise, I'm just following the directions on the box. There's my first batch. I'm going to do this 4 times. So, I'm going to come back over, get my 3/4 cup, add that in, do my 2 1/4. That's 2. And no, I probably will not have enough of the broth, but again, I can supplement with water, and that flavor is still going to be in there. So, I'm going to do another one of these guys. And I'm going to run out of milk, so I'm going to bring my other guy over. I'm going to finish this out. We're going to go 2. That's 3. And I actually will have extra. Yay! Actually, I'm going to give myself a little extra because each one of my dips of these have not been quite full. So I'm going to go about a 1/2 cup more. And then we're going to do our 2 1/4 again. Okay, the potatoes are done, and this is simmering nicely. Now I have not added the meat back in yet because I want these noodles a chance to give them a chance to cook. As soon as it's done, then we can fold the meat in and we're done. I've got my timer set. I've got about 8.5 minutes left on this. I will test the noodles You know what? I have a clean fork here. Let's find a noodle. Okay, we got one. And it's also hot as the surface of the sun. Yeah, 10 minutes. Perfect. It's still got the chew to it, so my 10-minute timer should be about right for 4 packages of this. Now, when you get it to temperature, go ahead and turn your heat down. This is all about heat management and keeping those noodles from sticking on the bottom because of the starch in them, obviously. So I just gave it a little stir. It's down on medium-low, and my timer is set, and I've got 8 minutes left. I'll be right back. All right, it's done. I just tested it, and it's perfectly tender and beautifully cooked. So now I'm just going to add the meat back in as gently as I can here. The heat is off. There goes my timer. And I'm just going to gently stir the meat in. And we've got stroganoff. And we have a lot of stroganoff. We probably have a gallon here, probably enough for 12 servings. So, there you go. It's done. All right, so I'm going to start mashing those potatoes, and we'll move on finishing up the Salisbury steak. I'll be right back. Alrighty, let's see here. All right, we got our potatoes. I have drained the water off. I've got my butter. I've got some milk here, and I've got some salt. And I'm going to start just like I did with the shepherd's or cottage pie, if you prefer. Is I'm just going to start breaking up these potatoes and get those kind of broken up a little bit. So it's hard to talk and mash at the same time. And these are cooked perfectly. I was afraid maybe because I had to leave them sitting for a couple of minutes till I could get to them, but nope, they have enough yield, but not too much yield, so they are not overcooked. Okay, get all the stuff out of there, and we're going to add our butter, and we're going to add a lot of butter. I'm sorry, but it's potatoes, and we're going to add a lot of butter. Now, yes, you can go ahead and melt your butter and then add it in. I just never think to do it, to be honest. Set that aside for a minute. So I'm just going to kind of mix the butter around in the hot potatoes, kind of get it going. And this is enough potatoes. I will probably have leftover potatoes, but again, they'll freeze. They'll freeze really, really lovely. You can freeze them, cool them, and put them in like a quart or gallon Ziploc bag, and spread them out flat and seal them up and freeze them, and they reheat beautifully. And by freezing them flat, they will defrost in a fraction of the time, and then you can just put it in a container, heat it in the microwave, and you've got fully cooked, natural, happy potatoes. So now in our mashed potatoes, I never add cracked black pepper. I'm kind of the pepper fan here, but even I don't use it all that much. However, I will use lots of salt because potatoes need it. Even though we salted our water, you still need to add salt. Things like pasta, potatoes, starchy things like that tend to really take on a lot of flavor because they just don't have a lot on their own. So as a result, you need to season. And by season, I mean a good tablespoon. About like that. Because you've got, remember, these are like 7 potatoes. They're gonna need it. I'm just gonna kind of mix that around just a little bit. But now we're gonna add our milk. How much milk? Well, start slow. About a cup. and just don't do what I usually do and like go in and slosh the milk back up on you, because I've done that more times than I can count. So that absorbed instantly. So I'm going to do another cup, and yes, I'm eyeballing it, but it's okay. Trust your eyes, trust your instincts when you cook. That will get you a lot further than stressing over things. Trust those instincts, my friends. All right. So we're looking pretty good. Now again, these will be frozen. The meal will be frozen. So again, in this case, I'm going, just like with the shepherd's pie or cottage pie that we made, I'm going to make these potatoes a little looser than I normally would, because once they freeze and then get rethawed, yeah, they need to have that looseness. Otherwise, they're going to, that starch is going to kick back on you, and you're going to end up with a brick. That's starting to look really, really lovely. They're nice and fluffy. And I think that's good right there for the milk. So let me grab a spoon or a fork. Handy dandy taster. And see how we did. Oh, these are hot. Oh, they're perfect. Yay. Okay, we don't need anything else in them. And we just need to put them in our containers, and then I'm just going to make a quick brown gravy. And we have Salisbury steak. We've got another meal done. So I'll be right back. Alrighty, so we have all of our components cooked and ready to go. Now, I originally was going to make 8 separate Salisbury steak dinners, but the person having this he's a big guy, he needs his nutrition, he works pretty hard. So I went ahead and just made it 4 containers and doubled up the patties, and each patty is about 3 ounces, so yeah, it should work out about right. And there's going to be plenty of other food that I'm making. So I'm going to start by putting the mashed potatoes that we made, just a good healthy dollop in each container. Try to get it in the container. That one needs a little bit more. Just kind of space it out just a little bit. That one needs just a little bit more too. Okay. Okay, so that's a nice amount. Show you what we've got here. So they all look about like that, and then I'm just going to take our gravy and I'm going to put it right over. And let me see if I can bring you guys in a little bit here. Okay, there we go. And I'm going to cover that really nicely, and I'm going to put some on top of the potatoes. So it looks like that. And let's get the others covered. So I'm taking about a ladleful each, which is about a half cup ladle. And then some on the potatoes, and the gravy will also help the potatoes stay nice and moist. And this is a super cinchy recipe. Basically, it's a multi-purpose recipe because we made one batch of meat, ground beef. We added all of our seasonings to it, and we made 4 dozen meatballs and 8 patties of Salisbury steak, all in one recipe. So that's pretty good. And that's it. And the rest of the potatoes and the rest of the gravy will freeze beautifully, and I can save it for another dish or a weekend meal. So I'm going to take and let these cool. And then I think we are down to Swedish meatballs. and I think we'll have this wired. So far we have 1, 2, 3, 4 meals done. One we're not going to get to. The spaghetti and meatballs we won't be able to get to. I'm just running out of time here. Everybody's home for the weekend and other family members will need the kitchen. So I've got room for one more meal to make, and that is going to be the Swedish meatballs. So I'll be right back. Good morning, everybody. We're back, and been a slight change of plans. I had promised you Swedish meatballs and discovered that actually I did not get all the ingredients to make Swedish meatballs. But the one recipe I said that we were not going to have time for, spaghetti and meatballs, I have everything. So meatballs are there, all our components are here, and we're going to get started. Okay, so what I've got right now is I've got my onions simmering nicely, and what I've done is I've gone ahead and added my Italian seasoning and my extra oregano and crumbled it in to really release those oils. And now they're in that nice hot pan, and they're releasing all those lovely oils into the onions. And I've opened up several of the cans of tomato sauce, and I'm about ready. I think I can go ahead and add those. Try to get all that goodness out. And I actually am going to add probably 6 cans, large cans of the tomato sauce, and these are 16 ounces. Because when I make this, it takes a while. I make it from scratch, and to get the sauce profile, the flavor profile of the sauce, I'll get that right, correct, it takes me a little while, a couple hours. I've had times where I've kind of just cooked it and worked with it all day. Now, I don't think I'll need to do that today because I've got this particular brand of sauce. And I do have several jars of homegrown tomato sauce on the pantry shelf. But I have had these cans longer, and so I want to use those up first. And when I actually do my own homegrown canned tomato sauce, I just do plain sauce. That way it's a blank canvas. I really like having that as a blank canvas to use for whatever recipe that I want to use. Now this upcoming year, when I go to harvest this year's garden's tomatoes, I'm hoping to expand my horizon a little bit and do my own pizza sauce, my own marinaras, that kind of thing. Because I think that would be fun to have on the shelf too. So that I could can something like this and just, I don't even have to mess with it at that point. I just did not have time last year to do it because I had, if I remember correctly, I ended up with 67 pounds of tomatoes. And it was quite a lot. So by the time I was done canning all of that, I was done. So, but this year I'm hoping to not only have more tomato sauce, but to actually expand, I guess is what my rambling is. So I'm going to go ahead and work in these last 2 cans over here, bring it to a simmer, and start working that mojo in. I'll be right back. Alrighty, let's see how it looks. We're simmering nicely here. It's looking good. To turn the heat down, and I'm going to grab a spoon so we can get an idea of where our flavors are at. It's going to take about 15 minutes for this to cool down. See, that's already really, really good. I'm not going to have to add a whole bunch of sugar to that. That's actually got a pretty decent flavor profile. Okay, so I'll get a little bit of sugar and add to that and turn my heat down to medium low. and I'll be back shortly. All right, it's that time, I think. I just did a taste test, and it is looking really, really good. And it's tasting really, really good. So what I'm going to do is I've turned up the heat just a little bit from medium low, closer to medium now. And I'm going to add the meatballs. And that's all the 4 dozen meatballs that we made together. And we're going to do this as gently as we can. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Oh. You can see. I didn't do it very cleanly, did I? Yeah, it's all good. It cleans up, thank goodness. So, I am going to stir these babies in. That looks beautiful. And I'm just going to let those heat through, and I'm going to get my pasta water going, and we've got spaghetti. It's done deal. So I'll be right back. Okay, the meatballs have heated through, and the sauce is complete, and this will make a lot of spaghetti and meatballs. Probably, normally when I do a batch like this, remember I use 6 cans of tomato sauce and 4 dozen meatballs. I put about 2 meatballs per serving. So you're probably looking at 16 containers, well, easily 12. Some of the meatballs, I did them a little smaller this time than I used to do great big ones. And so I'd only put like 1 or 2 because they were quite large. So I probably actually would put 3 per container. So easily 8 containers with plenty for freezer. I would say 14 containers if I wanted to use up the majority of it and then just save the rest in the freezer. And it does freeze very, very well. And that is it. We're going to boil some noodles and have some dinner, I think, and then I'm going to package up the rest for the freezer. Everybody, I want to thank you for joining me. This has been a long adventure, but a fun one, and I always enjoy you coming along with me. I had a great time, and I always look forward to seeing you again. And if you enjoyed this content, please share with a friend, like, subscribe, comment. I always love hearing from you guys, and I had a lot of fun. Thank you for coming along with me. I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care of yourself, and I love you guys. Bye-bye.